Hey guys, so this is part two of a commentary. And if you missed part one, you really need to see it. It informs this one. There'll be an annotation on the screen. You can click it, see part one, and if you've already seen it, then part two is about to begin. So there, go ahead, click it. It's in the middle, right there. All right, I'm gonna trust you. I'm gonna trust that you've seen it. Here comes part two. I was still depressed. It wasn't like, surviving a suicide suddenly turned things around for me. All the motivating factors that made me do it in the first place still existed. I still felt like I had no future. I still had had nothing going for me. I just it's funny when you're really depressed, and people get sad, everybody gets sad, but depression is like a next level kind of hole that's really like you just don't see your way out. You don't see how you're gonna dig yourself out of this hole. I'm sort of lacking words. The kind of anti-motivation you have is foreign to people that haven't seen real depression. So that's where I was. I guess lacked the motivation to give it another try. I think that's the best way to explain it. And just carried on with life like I always had. So that was that. And eventually, because I probably did this in like the winter of my junior year in high school. That's 10th grade or 17 years old for the international guys that aren't following this junior freshman stuff. And so I was what 17 years old in the winter, and then springtime came, and every springtime in Ocean City, New Jersey, most of the teenagers go for summer jobs because it's a tourist town. There's a ton of like boardwalk stores and like seasonal work that's perfect for students to pick up. And I started applying for jobs, and I couldn't get hired. I couldn't get hired because nobody wanted anybody with a cast on their arm. Like I went from place to place to place, and they were honest. They were like, look, how are you going to, like, if you work at like a retail store, part of it is the easy stuff, like, using some Windex and cleaning all the ceramics or whatever, little knickknacks they're selling at a retail store. And part of it is harder, like bringing in inventory from tractor trailers into the storeroom, taking a carpet out on like the back deck and beating it because people track sand in and it gets stuck in the carpet in front of the door. And I don't know if it's still this way, but like back in my day, the guys got the hard jobs and the girls got the easy jobs. The girls would never be asked to like carry heavy stuff or beat rugs, but the guys would. So they would look at me and they'd just be like, no, like we don't need anybody who's not going to be as healthy as a regular guy. So I didn't get hired. And to be honest, like at first it felt like yet another series, like yet another, failure in what I had going on. And I started going to the beach a lot. And it was the first time I got like a really savage tan. And I was hanging out on the beach every day. Every day. I had a friend who worked at an umbrella rental stand. You could rent these umbrellas and not have to carry them all the way from your house and a chair and stuff like that. And you'd get someone to plant it in the ground for you, which was good because we were much better at it than regular people were. So, he had that job, and I would just sit there in one of his chairs, like next to him, and hang out and keep him company. And his boss didn't care, like I was good to the customers, and I would even help him a little bit. Like if he wanted to rinse off or something, I'd watch the money and make sure that it was safe and there were no problems there. So, it was all good. Anyway, college kids in the U.S. anyway go back to school way earlier than high school kids did. So a few jobs opened up toward the very end of the summer, and I ended up working those. I was a umbrella rental guy, and I really liked the job. And it was cool to be an umbrella rental guy, and I'd never been cool before, and I was tan, and I would pick up girls a lot. I mean, like a lot. And it's not like I was having some sort of like wild sexual adventures with all these girls, but I was kissing them, and they liked me, and it was a ego boost because I wasn't really crushing it in high school, but that summer I was, and it made me feel good. So I took him to see the movie Pretty Woman that was out at the time. And it just seemed like a good date movie. And I must have seen that movie, like, I don't know, 17 times, 24 times, something like that. Like, I would just take girls after girls after girls. I'd have 2 or 3 girls at a time. They'd see each other. But because they were all tourists, I'd be like, all right, you caught me. I screwed up. I got time. I'm dating both of you this week. If you both want to dump me, that's fine. I'll get a new one by lunch. Like, that was my line of thinking. So, anyway, that was my summer, but I still had this notion that like the coolest guy on the beach wasn't the umbrella rental guy. It was the lifeguard. And, you know, you'd see him up there. Like, they were buff, they were good looking. The girls would hang out by their lifeguard stands and, you know, just beg to get their attention. And I'm thinking, like, all right, you know, like, being me is pretty cool, but I really want to be him. You know, he's the guy. He's the man around here. So I put forth a plan. What was my first long-term plan ever. I was a pretty good, like, I was a competent swimmer because I was a surfer. I started surfing as soon as I moved there, like at 12 years old, and I'm like 17 now. So you can just imagine how much paddling I've done on a surfboard, you know, at this time, years and years and years. And my stroke was pretty efficient, you know, because of that. And at the end of this year, I decided, like, all right, next year I'm going to join the swim team. I'm going to become a better swimmer, and I'm going to try out for the lifeguard patrol, the beach patrol, the following year. The beach patrol where I was, and this is, like, you hear lifeguard and you might be thinking pool lifeguard, which is a fine job and everything, but this is more like Baywatch. Like, people really drown. I saved, I know the number, it's like 130 some lives over the next 4 years. But but it was like it was a really cool job. And I put forth this plan, like, I am going to join the swim team. I'm going to work hard, and I'm going to, you know, have some success doing this. So in my senior year, I after school started, I kind of like semi-abandoned the plan mentally. Like, all right, you know, who do you think you are? You don't deserve it. And I may have mentioned it to someone who was on the swim team, and this guy was perfect. He you know what made him perfect? He wasn't that cool, and he wasn't that athletic, but he was encouraging me to go out for the swim team. And he was the perfect, what I'll say, recruiter for me, because, like, I want to say, you know, if it was like, you know, some captain of the football team god saying, you should come out, then I would have been uncertain or whatever. But because it was this guy who I was like, you know, I think I'm more athletic than this guy, and he's doing it, therefore I can do it. That was my line of thinking. So I showed up on the first day of the swim team, and I wanted to be in his lane just because I knew him a little bit. And I later found out that his lane was what they called the squid lane. It was where they put the worst swimmers. Swimmers are organized during practice based on their speed. And I couldn't do a flip turn, you know, the thing you do when you go to the wall. You kind of do a somersault and push off. And I wore these shorts. They're kind of like cargo shorts without the thigh pockets, but if you can picture like big baggy shorts. And that was the style to wear at the beach at the time. But during swim practice, the pockets expanded like parachutes and drug through the water. And I was just like struggling and was like, damn, what am I doing? And you know, that was me on the first day of practice there in the squid lane with these people not doing flip turns. But it didn't take too long before I worked my way from lane to lane to lane, and you know, the coach sort of noticed me and like had someone else give me more appropriate like swim practice gear. They were like lifeguard shorts, and I started, you know, doing better and working my way from lane to lane, and eventually I was in what my team anyway called the stud lane, and it was, you know, the guys that won all the races, and I was training with them. But the first meet hadn't even happened yet. we did this sort of stack ranking on in practice swim meet type thing to see who was the fastest. And 6 weeks into swimming practice, I was the top freestyle sprinter on the team. And I didn't know any other strokes, and they didn't bother teaching them to me because there's a lot of freestyle events in swimming. So we just did that. Anyway, so this was kind of turning my life around so far. Like, things were going good. I'd had an enjoyable summer for the first time, really, because I didn't work and I had, this cool beach patrol job. I joined the swim team and had some success at it. And I had never had success at anything before. And people were talking about me as like, a reason we're going to beat Mainland, our big rivals that year. And, it was cool. Like, I had never been anybody at this point. And, so yeah, where do you go from here? I'm on the swim team. Things are turning around, and that's about when I got kicked off the swim team. It turns out that the year before, my grades weren't high enough. In particular, I had failed one class, but my GPA was still high enough to participate in sports. But I had also not taken 4 years of gym because I broke that arm, and instead of gym, they put me in study hall. So it turns out you need like a certain amount of credits from the previous year to be eligible for sports, and I didn't have them because I didn't have gym, and that was that. So my mother went and appealed and sort of told him, like, look, swimming means a lot to this guy. It's changing things for him. Is there anything we can do? And they said that they would let me practice with the team, and if I picked up my grades, they'd let me compete with the team later. So that meant I had to get good grades and practice, but not compete through Christmas break. And I did. So I kept practicing with the team all the time. Some of the better swimmers were required to come in the mornings before school and practice twice a day because it was always after school. And I was kind of honored to be selected amongst those guys that they were like, Woody, we want you to come mornings. We want to make something out of you. So yeah, that was that. And while it wasn't as cool as like competing and stuff, and there were days I had no practice because everybody else had meets, and the next day in practice there'd be stories of like singing on the bus, or this guy kissed this girl or something, like, and I was missing all that, but I was happy with what I could get. I was still on a team. I did still have like a mission, and the big plan of being a lifeguard was still intact. So got my grades up, and we did end up beating our big rivals there. Like, they beat them once without me, and what they did is they shaved down like it was an end of year meet, and that gave them an advantage over the other team. But that, because they swam against each other twice a year, that sort of surprise was gone. Now both teams were going to shave down. They knew that we did it, and it takes a lot of time off to swim without any hair on you. So next time both swimmers were shaved down, but this time I was on the team, and I did my job, and we won. And I went all county in like a couple different events. So I remember one morning. They're doing like the PA announcements across the school. I don't know if you guys have that. And they're announcing like who got these awards. And my name was just all over there, like 50 free first team all county, 100 free first team all county, the 200 meter relay first team all county, 400 meter relay all medley all county. They're just like, Woody. And like, that was a neat day. I never had that before. Like, did you not know I'm this, late pubescent, not noticed, bad grade getting under the radar loser? Suddenly I'm not that guy. And things are turning around, and I've improved my grades, and I decided to go to college pretty much because I wanted to keep swimming. So that was that. And then I had the tryout to be a lifeguard. And the lifeguard tryouts were not an interview. Like, there was just an athletic competition. It was something that, there were 7 jobs and 70 people showed up, and there were 4 events, and then they sort of competed in the different events, and whoever the top 7 people were got hired. And I went there with my mom, and she came back and told my family, like, it's sad. He works so hard, but he's not going to get this job. I've seen the other people who were going for it, and there were like lots of collegiate swimmers there. They had their like LaSalle jackets on and their Villanova headgear, like the latex cap that swimmers wear. You probably know what that's like. And they were just seemingly in a whole nother league. But I was a good swimmer. I got 5th in the state in our in my best event. So even though I was a high school swimmer, I was a strong one. And also the events, to get in it, they weren't pool events, they were ocean events. And these guys were pool swimmers and I was a surfer. So here I am as a pretty good swimmer, pretty good surfer, competing in the ocean against pool swimmers who'd probably beat me in any other event. But not that one. Out of the 70 people who tried out for this job, I got first place. And I beat everybody. And like I don't know how it popped into my head today, but it was like this life-changing success for me. It was really the first success I ever had. The first thing and it seems silly, right? Like getting a lifeguard job. But it wasn't just a lifeguard job. It was a long-term plan that actually worked. It was a new position for me socially. It was the adult version of me hears lifeguard and thinks it's like a silly thing. It's not a big deal. But for a guy who never wanted anything to suddenly like put his mind to something and be a winner, it changed everything. So that was my first brush with success of any notable magnitude. People saw me differently in school and then out of school, and I finished high school and I got this summer job as a lifeguard, and it made me think about myself in a way that I hadn't before. On the downside, when I first became a lifeguard, it's fairly common to haze the rookies. And I didn't know it, but it's also really common to haze the guy that gets first place extra. and that was me. I think I got hazed extra. But whatever. There was no crushing my spirit at this point. Things had gone better, and that was that. After high school, I went to college, and I just swam Division III. One thing about swimming that's different than other sports is exactly how you would do in any given meet. Like your times, and I'm sure running is the same way. But let's say you're a football player and you're a running back, and you do really well. You don't necessarily how you do in college, right? You might be the fastest guy in Division III, but if you put yourself on a D1 field, these are different rankings of how good the competition is. You might struggle. But with a sport like swimming or track, you just look at the times and be like, oh yeah, I would have gotten 3rd in this race. I would have gotten 1st in this race. And I was good enough to be like a average Division I swimmer. Unless somehow their training made me better than I was in my D3 training, I don't know. But that's where I was. And which is a pretty strong swimmer. At Division III, as a freshman, I broke a school record, for that college, and that school had some pretty good swimmers. We had this guy who swam in the Olympics. So, but it was 15 years later or something. So my times were faster than his, I guess. But the real takeaway from this whole thing, my sort of loser to winner experience, is I guess that life is long, right? Thinking back to where I was earlier in this commentary, how how premature was it to think that at 17 years old, it was time to give up? How how bad was that? Things are going pretty well right now. Like, I love my wife. I love my kids. I've got this YouTube thing for a while going on. This is a good life. I this is some of the best years I've ever had, but not the only good years I've ever had. Things are all right, and things are gonna be all right forever. Like, I'm set up pretty well. How nuts is it that at 17 years old I had this notion that it was time to give up? It was time to roll the dice. Things were never going to work out. Um, Stop now. That's, if there's a moral to this thing, it's that if things aren't going your way, if you think that your future is hopeless, then you're not thinking straight. Life is a whole lot longer than you know, and it's way too early to give up on it. I didn't know that at the time, but I do now, because thankfully that that stupid hook on the skylight couldn't support my weight. I hope you guys enjoyed the commentary, and have a good day. Alright, if you enjoyed this, be sure to click on like. I always appreciate that. Or subscribe in the top right if you're new. 2 more series you might like. The top one is Wife Wednesday, and the bottom one is Road to Woody's Wife, where you can check to see that all my stories tie in and that they stay true as I tell them from different angles. So, yeah, anyway, have a good day.